to make a new application to join the Conservation Commission. And as part of that conversation, looking at all of the terms, two other people have a term to expire currently in 23, which is Rita Breton and Dick Harvey. So our hope is that you indicate to the town your desire to continue. And since we had a vacancy, we've moved Maggie up officially from first alternate to full voting member.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did this quite a few times. So
okay. Excellent. Good. Well, it's all being clarified for me today, including the fact that we have a new member of the Conservation Commission, Abel Plowd, who is joining us by Zoom as our second alternate with a term to expire in 2024. Welcome, Abel. And we look forward to having you as part of our discussions. I know this might be sort of you're coming in fresh and new today, and we welcome you to be part of the conversation, but also understand if because you're still getting caught up, you might want to listen in. But anything you'd like to say, Abel, to introduce yourself to us?
Well, I thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to being here, and I appreciate the flexibility to participate as much as I can at this point. So I'm looking forward just to listening and learning, and hopefully I can have some interesting input at some point.
Excellent. Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
And I believe that fills the commission right now, including our two alternate positions. So way to go, everyone. So wanted to open this up for public comment.
Sure.
Comments from the public. Andrew?
I think everyone's heard at this point. I wanted to state again that the Friends of Scarborough Marsh and Scarborough Land Trust have merged. And we are now one moving forward, which is pretty exciting. We hope to do some great things associated with the marsh in the future. We will be creating a Scarborough Marsh Committee, which will have members from the Friends board joining it, some of our board, but then as the committee deems necessary, other people on that committee too. We're also creating a Scarborough Marsh advisory panel, which basically will have positions for agencies and organizations that work with the marsh, and that includes the town of Scarborough. And that is to make sure that everyone knows what everyone else is doing, and that we also get ideas and projects that other groups are working on to see where they might need help or assistance. And then we're also planning a Scarborough Marsh Conference annually, something that would be open to the public to learn more about some of the scientific and restoration projects associated with the marsh, but probably also some field experiences, really kind of engage people in the conservation of Scarborough Marsh.
Excellent. That's good news.
We also have a comment on Zoom.
Oh, yes.
David, you can go ahead and unmute.
Are you able to hear?
Yes.
David Kuhnhart, resident, and as Jamie Fitch knows, a group of us are going to, who are affiliated with Citizens Climate Lobby, are going to appear in front of the Sustainability Committee of Scarborough early this Wednesday morning. And at the advice of John Anderson, because what we're asking them is simply for support for a resolution that will go to town council so that they will ask our members of Congress to pass a law. He suggested that we might want to talk with you. So I simply have the question of, would you be interested in hearing from Citizens Climate Lobby probably at the end of January, to see if you want to also recommend to town council that they pass such a resolution.
What do you all think?
This is Pete. David, thanks. Is there a draft of the resolve or anything that's available for us to look at? Or are you thinking of after
yes.
your meeting with the Sustainability Committee to be able to share that information?
Good question. There is a draft. Jamie has a copy of it, and I will be bringing to the Sustainability Commission some paper copies. I can share it with any email that you give me right now or after this meeting. You choose. It's very simple. It doesn't ask for Scarborough to spend any money. It asks for Scarborough to ask members of Congress to pass a national policy of carbon fee with cash back for everybody equally.
Got it. I think it makes sense if you could send the document and then we could circulate it to the commissioners and then hear a little bit more from you. Plan to hear a little bit more from you in January.
Okay. What's the email that I should send it to,
David,
please?
To Jamie.
I can
Jamie,
send it to
got it.
everyone.
Oh, excellent. Jamie, thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, David.
Thank you for this moment. And great work, by the way. That 30 by 30, great work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll say something quickly. My name is Carrick Gamble. I spoke with Marla over the phone recently, just had some questions about the history of pesticide use and regulations in Scarborough. I'm a Scarborough resident and I work at the Natural Resource Conservation Service at the USDA Service Center on Route 1. And my focus is on urban agriculture, but I was involved in the 100 Resilient Yards project in South Portland, which took place over this last year. Not sure if anyone's familiar with it, but really cool project to kind of engage citizens around stewardship of like their land and space, and basically created 100 different demonstration sites in people's yards and in public spaces like one of the high schools in South Portland, the library, basically converting lawns into like native pollinator spaces or rain gardens or vegetable gardens in really small scale ways, like 10 foot by 10 foot kind of like plots. But it was a really awesome initiative. There were a lot of beautiful moments of interaction between like volunteers. It was really volunteer driven, and so I was involved in it. I would really love to see something like that happen in Scarborough, and so I guess I will throw that out there as a thing to consider in the future, and something I would be happy to talk further about with anyone.
Thank you. Was that citizen initiative or was it through South Portland?
Yeah, it was
Government, or-
through the City of South Portland Sustainability Office
Okay.
with a variety of partners like Maine Audubon and Humane Cooperative Extension and a few others.
Pete has his hand up. Or you have a question for Carrick?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I missed your name, but was that a Maine Coastal Community Grant that funded that project? Do you know by any chance?
Yeah, there were a variety of grants. My name's Carrick, by the way. Nice to meet you.
Okay,
Pete.
thank you.
But there were a variety of grants. Maine Coastal Communities was definitely one, and a few others. Healthy Babies. I can't recall all of them.
Okay, so multiple funding sources.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, thanks.
I mean, it sounds interesting. I'd love to hear a little bit
Yes.
more. We should work you into an agenda at some point.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
are you expressing an interest in personally getting involved again, but here in Scarborough?
Yeah, I guess I'm expressing an interest in just seeing, like, I was not involved in like the higher level like machinations of it, but was a volunteer throughout and like kind of worked with Julie, the sustainability director, at a variety of sites. So just like saw kind of on the ground the impact of it and feel like a project like that could really be a wonderful way to engage Scarborough residents around kind of, yeah, stewardship, and also build community around conservation aims
Nice.
related to restoring native habitats and like spaces for pollinators and
Nice.
such.
It makes me think of, have you two met before? Because
We chatted on the phone briefly.
The Friends of Scarborough Marsh has the Healthy Yards campaign or initiative, and seems a lot of good
Yeah.
ways to connect.
Yeah, it's a really, there was a similar impact of, I've seen those healthy marsh signs around where I live, and yeah, it's and in South Portland, the like 100 resilient yards, they have the signs all around. So you drive around South Portland and like go on Highland Ave and turn left and go down and see another sign, and it was just a really cool way to feel like you were part of this community of conservation minded folks. So,
Nice.
yeah.
And something for Sustainability Day next year. Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll work you into it.
Yeah, I would love to talk about it again in the future at some point. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think that covers public comment. Let's move into old business. And we're going to be reviewing the web application and looking to finalize recommendations. You all continued that conversation last month while I wasn't here, and I'll say that I didn't watch the recording, but I read the minutes. So I don't know who would like to kick off this part of the discussion, whether that's Pete or Jamie. You want to do a quick review of where we are?
Sure, I can start. So at the last meeting, we discussed doing a little bit of a GIS exercise to look at potential impacts of the proposed setbacks of in our coastal areas that were proposed at HAT, highest astronomical tide, plus 125 feet or 4 feet of sea level rise, whichever is greater. Everyone in the email that went out prior to this meeting should have received a link to the web app, and I can share that. Kind of looking at our initial analysis, and Pete responded back with some revisions, which Micah has started to incorporate, but I think that we're going to need probably a little bit more. Actually, we're going to do this. All right, everyone in Zoom should be able to see that. Give me a second so I can pull it over for everyone in the room to take a look at. All right, Zoom, are you seeing the map? Zoomers.
Abel and Pete, can you have a thumbs up if you see the map?
Okay, perfect. All right, so let me try zooming in here a little bit because it's a little. So Pete had said that some of our kind of freshwater or non-tidal areas were still being highlighted in this map. So Micah, I think, went through and pulled them out a little bit. I think they're now just more red as opposed to the purplish shading that is what is representing highest astronomical tide. So Micah just was able to start working on this afternoon, so we haven't kind of incorporated all of Pete's changes. So just to orient you, this purplish color is highest astronomical tide. This darker reddish orange would be 125-foot buffer. And then these lighter orange areas would be 4 feet of sea level rise. So you can see kind of, it does, at least in a lot of areas, it does a pretty good job covering, there's overlap between HAT plus 125 and HAT plus 4 feet. But we do have these pockets where 4 feet of sea level rise is going to be a much larger area than a 125-foot buffer on top of highest astronomical tide.
Could you orient just where are we looking at here?
Yeah, so this is
Please.
Scarborough Marsh. So this
Yeah.
would be Pine Point.
That's Pine Point.
This is Ferry Beach. So moving up, this would be Dunstan River, Nonsuch River, Libby River.
Okay.
And then Pete had also asked for affected acres of undeveloped land, which we which fall within the HAT plus 4 feet of sea level rise. And we have approximately 4,352 acres that fall within the HAT plus 4 feet of sea level rise that are undeveloped. And that doesn't account for parcels where there's some development, but there's swaths that are still undeveloped. Those are just parcels, acreage that where the parcel has no identifiable structure on it. And Pete has his hand raised.
And Jamie, just a quick clarifier, does that 4,000 whatever acres that you just said, does that include, or does that exclude existing areas below the highest astronomical tide? So it's that band?
Existing areas below the highest astronomical tide.
Yeah, so it would remove all the purple areas and just include those orange areas.
I don't think so. I think it's everything. So
Okay.
you want to know what's just in this orange area?
Yes.
Okay. No, it does not. I'm pretty sure it does not include that.
It'd be pretty easy to do. It's just a quick raster math. So
Yeah, and I don't know if
it's fine. Just it doesn't need to be done now, but I just would like to have that because that's really the statistic I was thinking of.
Micah gave me that too, so I can give you that.
Okay, cool.
It's 1,307.
Awesome. That's kind of what I was looking for. And that's the reasoning, everybody, that I was thinking about that was if we put these protections in place for adjacent undeveloped uplands, maybe at some point, based on the fact that these areas would have significant setbacks and significant buffers, maybe there could be a focus of developing conservation easements on a lot of these properties or sections of properties that then could help us towards our goal of 30 by 30. I don't know any of the details or administrative details of how you do that. It's just a concept that I thought would make sense to explore.
I like that concept. Does anyone else have their hands up? Or
No.
anything you want to share?
No, Autumn was just,
You just asking clarifying language, because some of the way our GIS works in this buffer, the buffer might be on a parcel that is undeveloped, but only maybe a portion of the parcel is in the
Right.
buffer area, so
yes.
I think we need to do some further analysis before we use any of those numbers to see the real affected, are you following?
Yes.
Like you
and-
might have a 20-acre parcel that has 1 acre in the buffer, but if we capture the whole 20 acres,
Oh.
it's misleading.
Right.
Yes.
It sounds like we're having a greater effect.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That might negatively affect the outcome
Okay.
of this being a positive thing.
Yes.
So I just want to be really careful with those numbers. So we'll have to really dive into what
Yeah.
is captured. But Pete, my question is, do you think the way we have the draft written right now, it's HAT plus 4 feet or HAT plus 125 feet, whichever is greater? It sounds like that's still appropriate language. That's what we have for the marsh migration zone.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. And one of the things that I was thinking of when I was looking at the GIS analysis, there are some areas where HAT 125 are greater than the HAT plus 4 feet, and that's mostly along steeper sloped uplands adjacent to the marsh. Because, if you've got 4 feet and a steep slope, it's not going to penetrate as far as if it's a shallow slope. And then I was thinking about some of the way we've structured some of these numbers. And basically one of the suggestions or things I wanted to bring up real quick for further consideration is we don't have that many coastal bluff zones that are unstable in Scarborough. So maybe it made sense to decrease that buffer to HAT plus 4 plus 125. And for the marsh migration zones, make it HAT plus 4 or HAT plus 150 instead. Because it's really these areas adjacent to the marsh that we're trying to put a focal point on, and I just wanted to throw that out there and see what people thought about that. And I think there's arguments for both, but I think there's a stronger argument for trying to have a larger marsh migration zone in low-lying, not steep areas, as opposed to trying to protect an additional 25 feet, for instance, in steep sloped areas.
I think that makes sense, but I don't think you have to trade one for the other necessarily. I
True.
think you could probably keep it, maybe increase the marsh migration zone. I would recommend you, start higher and
Work back.
work back. I
Yeah,
think your ad is at a reasonable spot.
yeah. One of the reasons I also was thinking about this was a community that has a lot of bluffs. So 85% of their shoreline is bluffs. Brunswick is the community I'm thinking of. They've adopted HAT plus 125 as their setback, which is pretty significant. But it's not even HAT plus 4 plus 125. So this would be a very large step, I guess you could say. But again, there isn't much of Scarborough that is even classified as unstable bluff. So it doesn't really have that much of an impact, I guess is what I'm saying.
Gotcha. I think once we get the mapping worked out, that'll be the important part of all of this, is being able to show exactly what's affected. And then, because we started with just the marsh migration zone, but then we have to look at each different one too, for the same kind of look, to show council what it's gonna actually look like.
Yeah, and one of the final thing I'll say about that is the majority of bluffs in Scarborough are unclassified.
Okay.
And I think I mentioned this before. There are only a few that are classified, but if they are unclassified, that means per shoreland zoning, and this is in shoreland zoning, the minimum regulatory setback will apply. So unless bluffs either become classified, or I guess if Scarborough's, I don't know if this ordinance that we're talking about or revised chapter would trump the rest of shoreland zoning, but there might be an inconsistency that's created there that I thought of. So I'm just throwing that out there for us to think about down the line.
That's just for the coastal bluffs? Okay.
Yes. So shoreline zoning basically says if it's an unstable bluff, the minimum setback is 75 feet. If it's a stable bluff, the minimum setback is 75 feet from the high tide line. And if it's an unclassified bluff, so it could be 30 feet high and falling into the water, the setback would still be the minimum setback, which would be HAT plus 75, because it's unclassified. And most of Scarborough's are unclassified.
So since we don't have a lot that would be affected by the coastal bluff, should we remove coastal bluff from this part and address it in shoreland later on, so as to not confuse the issue?
Not sure. I think it's good to include now and to at least plant the seed. And it does relate to undevelopment, or not undevelopment. It does relate to creating these buffer areas and undeveloped areas. So I think it makes sense. There's a good overlap still. I just want to make sure that it's okay if this ordinance is in place, that it might trump our existing shoreline zoning language, is what I'm saying.
Right. That's kind of weird. To
No, I
have
feel like
two
we
conflicting
Mhm.
things that don't point to each other.
Right.
I mean, we do have a couple unstable bluffs along the Nonsuch that are mapped, and stable bluffs that would overlap into these areas. So in other words, it's hat +4, but there's also an unstable bluff there. Anyway, we can dig into it deeper, but let's just.
Okay, I do have I have this in everything. The more restrictive provision shall apply. So I do have that in the,
Okay. I think that should apply in everything to do with areas around the marsh. Yep. So
put that in shoreline too, or make some reference to it.
yeah, that might cover it.
Okay. Thanks, Pete.
So, Pete, in sort of working this out, are you thinking another, like a meeting with Autumn and Jamie might get you there?
Yeah, I think when we get some of these close, it'd be nice to put lot lines on these.
Yeah, that's actually available.
Yeah, and
You
take a closer look at it.
You have to zoom in really close and you can get lot information.
Oh, I didn't zoom in really close. That was my issue. Because I think it would make sense to look at, number one, how many parcels are impacted. It's going to be a lot. And then, there are a lot that are already developed that are not going to be impacted because, they're developed. The other thing we need to think about is, for instance, the one right in the middle of what you're showing, to the right of the pond. There's a huge, you go down a little bit. Yeah, that house right there. There's a huge tract of undeveloped land and one house. So to me, this would be, or there's a couple parcels there. So it'd be good to know, like that parcel right there, the parcel to the north of the house. That's already inland fisheries and wildlife. Sweet. But it'd be good to know, like, how do we deal with areas where we've got one house on, say, a 4 or 5 acre parcel? And does that mean it's developed, or does that mean it's not developed? So I don't know how we draw the line there.
For this really rudimentary exercise that we're doing this evening, those would be considered developed parcels because
Okay.
it's
Okay.
an existing structure.
Okay. I agree. Farther down the line, it might make sense to include those parcels because maybe those are the ones where a conservation easement could be placed on certain areas of somebody's parcel, for instance, that they don't have any interest in developing, that's partially wet, et cetera, that could help us towards our 30 by 30 goals.
Yeah.
That's all.
Are you able to stay, or you need to go at 6:30? Okay, thank you. Okay, so, I think this is really tremendous work, what's been done already, and, I think I and we together as a commission are eager to move this to the next step for, this next step in the process of making our recommendations. But it also sounds like there's an interim step with Pete meeting with staff to fine tune. And do you think then maybe coming back in January for us to vote as a commission to move this to the next stage seems to be the right timing, would fit?
I think it could, yeah.
Because we're not meeting in
That-
January till the end of the month.
Right.
Yeah, January is not until the end of the month, so that's good because it's not going to happen before the new year, at least probably on my end.
Not on ours either.
Yeah, I think all we really need to do is get the mapping and then really tweak the numbers and see what we're really comfortable with.
Okay,
And because I don't want to take it forward to long range to review until I can show them what the impacts look like either.
okay.
And then it'll go to ordinance committee, so that's fine with me.
Okay, great.
Maybe you and Jamie and I can meet a couple times in the interim too, so we can just have some dialogue and some calls and figure it out as we get information. That works.
That sounds good.
And I know tonight we were looking at this mapping of the marsh, but we all have talked about the other wetlands and pools, yes, and streams. Any other input or questions from commissioners? Oh, go ahead, Pete.
I know Dick had some concerns about, I think it was ephemeral streams that I don't think we've really discussed in depth.
Right. I think, remind me, when we did talk about that 2 months ago or the 2 meetings ago, and we said that that would be something to look at for a future effort, because it seems to take considerable effort to identify those, that were we to take the time to do that, we would further delay moving these recommendations forward. Is that what you remember, Dick?
So, yeah, I agree. It's going to take some time, but we've made some progress.
Great.
I know this really sounds stupid because everybody else knows about it, but I just stumbled on it. Becky Schlafler at the DEP said we ought to use hillshade maps to identify these streams. So I started looking at some hillshade maps, and they just pop out of the map.
Huh.
And so we've done some very preliminary field checking with GPS, and we've got some verification. So we've made some really interesting steps forward. And I'm also finding out that there are scattered around the country, there are people who actually are interested in intermittent streams, especially for citizen science purposes. So I think they present a great opportunity, if not necessarily directly in terms of ordinances, at least in terms of the greater public awareness of their importance.
Nice. There's something about this and our developing these recommendations that seem to be make for ripe topics for our 2020 or a couple of our 2024 education sessions, because I know we were looking for recommendations and suggestions for topics. So is everyone good to move forward on that piece as suggested? We'll plan to come together in January, ready to vote on our recommendation, having additional work done by Pete with the staff. Yes, I see thumbs up, heads nodding. Great, thank you. Thanks, Pete, and thanks, team, for doing all this, and Micah too.
Yes, thanks for pulling that GIS together. That was really helpful.
Sure. And I will let everyone know once updates have been made. If you've got other suggestions, like this should be we should keep tweaking it until we get it right. I will say Micah was pretty frustrated because I would ask him to make a change and it would undo other changes that I had already asked him to make. So it was.
That's okay. We can frustrate Micah.
Yeah, but that's totally fine. I'm just saying, like, the link won't change, so you can go back and look at the app at any time, and it will be continued to be updated as we work through some of the changes that were asked for and refine that a bit. So, and I'll let you all know once substantive changes have been made, so you can know to go back and take a look if you're interested in looking a little more closely.
Great, thank you. Okay, so the under new business and on conserving land, an update on the ad hoc open space committee. And so last time the commission met, unanimous recommendation or appointment of Maggie to be the liaison or member of the open space committee out of the Conservation Commission. Councilor Shoup is not with us tonight, but are there other updates you want to share?
Yeah, just to give you a quick update on the timeline, and also to note saying that Councilor Shoup's not here. She will continue being our council liaison. That appointment was finalized at last week's town council meeting, just as an aside. Autumn and I have reached out to the other groups that will be represented in the ad hoc committee, asking for their recommendation or their kind of nomination to the ad hoc committee by January 8th, so that it can go before the town council for their approval at the January 17th meeting. The groups have been slowly passing along their nominees to Autumn and me, and we will forward them to the council for their January 17th meeting. And we anticipate the release of the request for qualifications for our open space plan to be released on December 28th. So we're finalizing that document and releasing it just after the holidays, and then it will be due at the end of January.
So it's probably February before this group will meet.
Probably February before we'll meet. Yeah, especially since the council won't appoint them until the 17th, officially appoint until the 17th.
And the RFP you're talking about is for a consultant.
Yes. Yeah.
It might take a while to get him or her on board.
Our timeline right now is to have them on board early February.
Okay.
We'll see if that all pans out, but that's how our timeline is looking. So I think that early February for a meeting of the ad hoc committee will be kind of spot on.
And if I listened into some of the appointments committee, and if I tracked it all the way through, I may have missed some later discussion, but it sounds like there will be a town councilor who will be the liaison to the committee, and the committee will vote on a member chair.
Okay.
There was some discussion about a town council member chairing the committee, and that was sort of changed to a member of the committee would chair the committee.
And I believe that Councilor Shoup was nominated,
Okay,
will
great.
be the liaison to that
Great,
ad hoc committee.
nice.
Are you gonna be on it as well?
Autumn and I will be the staff.
Okay. Terrific.
And we have about half of it filled.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, we're waiting on a few others, but everyone's, we have long range and conservation, Scarborough Land Trust.
The
And,
Parks and
Fish
Conservation
and,
Land Board,
Sorry, and the
Rod and
fishing.
Gun Club. Yeah, Scarborough Fishing Game.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Trying to find, sorry, I got a message, Counselor Shoup can't get on the planning board agenda online on the calendar, so I'm trying to help.
Yeah, that's the conflict, is that the planning board is meeting now too.
Yes.
But this will be the last conflict.
So very pleased with that, yes. The planning board meetings are moving to once a month, and you all, it's a perfect alignment of the stars. Very
Nice.
excited.
We won't be overlapping again.
Right.
And then, so we have another item of discussing our approach for supporting the renewal of the Scarborough land bond. I might ask Jessica to speak to this, unless Jamie has an opening to it.
Nope, Jessica, if you don't mind, you can take it away.
So Parks and Land Conservation Board did draft a letter to the town council recommending a new land conservation bond in November of 2024. So this coming November. No amount has been determined yet. Just to refresh folks' memory, the first bond was in 2000. It was 1.5 million. The second bond was 2003 at 2.5 million. In 2009, it was a $1 million bond. And then in 2019, it was a $2.5 million bond. So a total of 7.5 million since 2000. And as was discussed in the last town council meeting on Wednesday, that the remaining bond funding from 2019 will likely soon be exhausted. The Scarborough Land Trust has a wonderful slate of projects that are likely to come before the board. So we really anticipate that it's not going to last that much longer. So November of 2024 is advantageous in a couple ways, but also the need is there. I've also reached out to Randy and I's former organization, the Trust for Public Land, who actually helped with the original bond in 2000 and then the bonds in 2009 and 2019 to see if they are willing to help Scarborough. And I'm hoping to have a conversation with them this week, talking both to the National Director of Conservation Finance, Will Abinger out of Tallahassee, but also the Maine State Director, Betsy Cook, to see if they're interested in helping. And their focus is really on natural climate solutions and equitable parks. And I think that Scarborough fits very neatly within the natural climate solutions priority. So I'm very hopeful.
Can you describe what it is the Trust for Public Land would do to
Oh.
help?
For those of you who didn't work for the Trust for Public Land for over a decade. So the Conservation Finance Department at the Trust for Public Land helps communities pass funding measures for land conservation. And they do that in a variety of ways. They do feasibility research. So that is what funding mechanisms are legally available and their revenue raising capacity. So in this instance, we know that it'll be a bond measure. What they could help with is helping to determine that amount. So that's a per household cost or per household contribution. And that would flow into polling. So that would be polling voters on two things. One, the amount. So what average household costs do folks support, but also the purposes. So that's less probably to write the ballot language, but actually to help with the campaign. So what are the purposes of a land bond that voters in Scarborough support? You know, what are the most effective messages? I will say that that's typically water. 200 plus surveys across communities all across the country. It's like water. So I don't anticipate it'll be dramatically different in Scarborough, but that sort of public opinion polling is something they do, which helps with the amount, the purposes, and the campaign. And then Trust for Public Land can also help with the campaign aspect. And I know that Andrew's in the room, and he has gone through this process twice, and I believe both instances were in Colorado, with the Trust for Public Land, so he can vouch from not a former employee standpoint on the sort of process, but they help with the campaign, and that can be mailers and all sorts of things to support the Vote Yes campaign. And I also don't want to speak for the Scarborough Land Trust, but I do want to provide an opening because they've also offered generously to help with a lot of this. I think that you think of the Trust for Public Land as more an advisory role, and I think on the ground, the Scarborough Land Trust would be doing a lot of the day-to-day campaign. I can sort of see your shoulder, so that I'm staring at Andrew's shoulder.
Yeah.
Did you want to jump in here?
We have offered to help both with costs for polling and to take the lead on mounting a campaign to get it passed, and probably the majority of funding for that campaign. One of the things polling also tells you is how soft or strong you think the measure is going to be, which kind of dictates how much of a campaign you need. If you feel like you got 80% support, you probably don't need to spend a lot of money on a campaign. If you're 51%, you got to spend some money to get that thing passed. Jessica said all the pertinent things here. I actually worked on two local ballot initiatives, one in Florida, one in Colorado. Both passed, but it took us 2 rounds in Florida actually to get it passed. The first time it did not. And it really takes all partners. I mean, these are not single entity efforts. This is going to take people speaking to the garden club and, the social organizations and everyone that will listen, and to try to get that message out there about why this is important and what it does. And, all the way to knocking on doors, and something that the land trust did, I believe, in the last ballot run. So, yeah.
And I think one of our strongest cases is as what the previous land bonds have accomplished, and we haven't done a good enough job at talking about the wonderful properties that have been protected through these bonds. So not only talking about the needs, but how the bonds have protected very special places in our community. So we're working on that as a possibility, as some outreach, but we're not 100% there yet. That's not a fully formed proposal.
And Jessica shared with Randy and me a memo that was drafted from the Conservation Land Board to the council requesting that the land bond be renewed. And the thought was that we would discuss with Conservation Commission if you all want to do a similar memo to the council encouraging the land bond be put on the ballot in 2024. And obviously this aligns and is essential to 30 by 30. So it's something I would think this group would want to pursue.
And so the letter was discussed in concept at the meeting last week. But I don't know that it's been, I know Councilor Shoup has the draft. I don't know who she has shared it with. Folks know that the draft letter of recommendation exists. I don't know who's seen it. Well, formally who's seen it.
So is the Conservation Land Board awaiting feedback before that's finalized? Like, what's the that group's approach moving forward so that we can kind of maybe align our approaches?
Well, I was really hoping Councilor Shoup would be on the call, but that's not working. So I don't know. She had no changes to the draft. But I don't know when she's planning on formally introducing it. So I don't want to speak for her on that.
But what was provided is what the Conservation Land Board is submitting to council.
Yes.
Can that be shared with this full group?
Yep.
Okay.
It's not a secret. It's just, I don't know where it is in the process.
Gotcha. So I'll send that out after this meeting also for folks to start taking a look at.
And is there interest? Oh, excuse me, Andrew.
Can I have just a quick comment? Yes. At the last Parks and Conservation Land Board meeting, and Jessica and I argued against this, there was an effort that almost kind of seemed like it was going to go through, where they wanted to put a number on the land bond and basically just do what was done last time. But I think we both tried to encourage them. One is, let's test some numbers first before we make that decision. And two, if we're serious about the 30-30 goal, $2.5 million is not going to do it. No. It's not even going to come close, especially with land prices now.
I was going to say $2.5 million today is a lot different than it was in 2019, 2020.
Well, I mean, it's the same amount as 2003. We're talking 20 years ago.
Oh yeah,
right.
Land prices are dramatic. I don't think I'm overstating that. Land prices are dramatically different than they were in 20 years ago.
I mean, they're dramatically different than they were like 4 years ago.
So based on my background and professional experience, my strong recommendation for both PCLB and this group is to do the polling and understand where voters are at and have a very rigorous approach to determining the amount.
And first step is there interest in the commission to write a support letter for asking the town council to start the work on a bond measure? I see a head nodding, a
Nodding,
thumb up, a
thumbs
thumb
up,
up, a thumb up.
okay.
Yeah, are we talking about like making a motion for that?
I don't think we need a motion at this
Okay.
point. I think the motion will come when we have a draft
Draft,
memo
good.
to move forward, but just so that we're in agreement that this is something the commission is going to begin work on.
Okay. And Dick, did you have a
Yes.
comment? Oh, yes, you're voting yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, good. So another thing for January agenda, perhaps, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Jessica, for filling us in on the process, and glad that Scarborough Land Trust Expanded is also behind this and will step in to help lead. Thank you.
And I don't know if it's appropriate now to have the discussion, you know, the recommendation for a land bond is really the first step. And there'll be a lot of effort leading up to hopefully a successful November ballot measure. And I don't know when it would be appropriate to discuss what role or roles that the commission is comfortable with in supporting a bond.
Yeah, I'm not sure what role the commission has had in that process in the past. Pete I think is our longest tenured member, and he turned off his camera. So when he returns, maybe we can see if he remembers what role the commission's had. Pete, you're back.
Hey, sorry, just checking on the puppy. I think honestly, besides individual members talking in support at council meetings, I don't think we ever wrote like a letter of support,
Ah, okay.
but I think that
Did
should change.
you play a role in campaigning for it?
No.
Probably not as a group.
Okay.
And I may need to just get some guidance on what the commission can do officially
Okay.
for that.
Good. All right, so like we said at the outset, it promises to be an exciting year. Thank you all. Okay, any other new business before we head to updates? Let's go to updates. Promoting citizen stewardship. Marla and Rita. We had a good report.
Okay, I'm happy to report out, and so we will be looking ahead and working on a communications plan for 2024. So we had I believe was a very successful conservation speaker series, and we also did help with the workshop back in April that was related to the 30 by 30 resolution. So we're gonna look to 2024 to do more of these collaborative presentations in the future, working with the Scarborough Land Trust, hopefully, and the Scarborough Public Library and other groups such as that. I did want to mention there's a Scarborough Community Survey that the town of Scarborough is conducting currently. So there's a vendor that created that survey. The information and a link about that was sent out by Jamie, and also it's in my little report, so you can find that and fill in and then ask a lot of questions about all sorts of conservation related topics. So it's really important that everybody we know takes that survey. And I will say, conservation is in the news a lot. At least the town of Scarborough covers conservation news quite well. and also the Scarborough Leader. And as you can see, it's just interesting to see what topics are in the news. And one of the big topics, I don't really think we've talked about it as a Conservation Commission. I don't know if there's time to speak about it tonight, but is the climate ready resiliency project related to US Route 1 and Pine Point Road. I went to that last meeting. It was really interesting. And I don't know if there's time to speak about that, Jamie, or not, but we're looking ahead. And I will say, I would be interested in helping with the campaign to help pass a referendum related to land bond fund, if that is appropriate for the Conservation Commission members to be a part of, or perhaps that could be involved as a private citizen. I'm not really sure. I'm actually wondering though if there should be some sort of committee that should be formed with the conservation groups and the town working together so that we can get our messaging out there and hopefully pass another land bond. That would be really exciting. So that's all I have. I don't know if Rita, if you wanted to add anything.
Only that I certainly agree with your last statement, that we really do need to get as many of our conservation groups involved as possible in supporting this new land bond, particularly since the commission has been so involved with the 30 by 30. I hope there is a way as a commission that we can be involved in the land bond issue.
Yeah, I will say as individuals, you absolutely can participate in that. And like I said, I just need to get some guidance on what the commission as a body of the town, what role the commission might be able to play in that work. And I'm happy to give an update on the Route 1 and Route 9 project. So we did have a public meeting at the beginning of November where Maine DOT essentially introduced the project scope and where things stand. I will say what was presented is likely not going to be the final solution. It's just very preliminary, and it's changed even from 4 months prior to that, kind of what their thinking was and kind of where it's evolving to. So we had a meeting with state and federal natural resource agencies back in August, where the message was loud and clear that Maine DOT needs to be looking at the openings under the road, so essentially the culverts, and figuring out if those culverts are adequately sized to handle the water that is going to be moving through them over the next 50 years. And so Maine DOT initially wasn't planning on changing any of those culvert openings, and they're now doing some additional study of water levels and flow rates through the marsh and tributaries to assess the culvert sizing and basically make a determination on whether or not the culverts are adequate. If they need to add more culverts, is a bridge span more appropriate? So that's all being looked at currently. The goal is to minimize the impact on the marsh adjacent to the road, but they do acknowledge that there is going to be some impact when you talk about raising a road up, 4 feet, 3 to 4 feet. You can't just have straight walls up. There's going to need to be some slope involved, and that all means impact the marsh. So nothing is finalized yet. They're still collecting their data and coming to some kind of thought on what's needed in terms of road level, road openings for the water to pass through, and how the marsh will be impacted. And it's hard to wrap your head around when we're doing all of this work to not be thinking about the marsh. DOT has very specific funding requirements from the federal government for how their funds can be spent. And so it has to be focused on the road. And so if there's other sources of funding that can address, do other things to lessen the impact on the marsh, they can consider that, but they can't use their specific funding necessarily to benefit the marsh, unfortunately. So it may just mean getting creative with some of the designs and some of the funding opportunities. And there's a lot of funding out there right now for resiliency work. So we're hoping that we'll be able to incorporate some really innovative approaches, but things are still very much evolving at this point. That's what I've got. And I can try to answer questions. I will say in the what's happening section of the town's website, there is the contact for the project manager at DOT. And you're welcome. His name is Ernie Martin, and you're welcome to reach out to him with comments and questions throughout the process. And that what's happening page, we're also trying to keep updated with information about the project. So you should be able to go there. If you have questions, you can reach out to me, reach out to Ernie, and take a look at that webpage on the town website.
I think, thank you for that. And Marla and Rita, I think that another great role that the commission can play is through citizen stewardship efforts or education efforts throughout the year that really build excitement and interest and energy around this land bond, why it's so important, what it can mean to the town of Scarborough, and furthering a 30 by 30 resolution. Thank you. Thanks for excellent work in 2023. Just really wonderful. It was a full year, and you all did a lot of work and a lot of very thoughtful efforts to bring us together and convene really interested folks in a series of conversations at the library, and find partners to do that. So thank you for that. Any other thoughts for Rita and Marla?
I didn't know if we wanted to circle back to the land bond, since Karen is on the line with us. So if we want to,
we know there's a dual role you're playing, Karen, tonight with planning board in here, and congratulations for being reappointed as liaison to the Conservation Commission this year.
Sure, thank you. That was a request. I was listening to the planning board because they're talking about the Beech Ridge Motor Speedway right now, which is interesting. I apologize for being late. I'm not sure what was talked about by the 30 by 30 or by the ad hoc open space committee. I don't know what kind of update you guys are looking for from me.
So with ad hoc, Autumn and I were just able to give an update kind of on the timeline, and that the nominations from the various groups will go to council. We're planning the January 17th meeting. So we're asking all the groups to provide their information to Autumn and me by January 8th so we can forward it on to the council for that process. We were talking about the Conservation Land Board's request to the town upcoming request to the town council about the reauthorizing the land bond, and just wondering what role the commission, or if you had any thoughts on what role the commission should play, or how the process to bring that to council is going to work, so that we can align anything that we do with what the land board is doing.
Sure.
For example,
so
a letter of support. Yeah. That would be helpful.
So first, procedurally, I am concerned. I think the ad hoc open space committee is going to come to the appointments committee next month. And we have to, I'm not sure. I think procedurally we have to appoint everyone that you guys have appointed. So, but I think we can actually do that the week before, hopefully.
And then a clarifying question about that, Karen?
Yeah.
So when the draft charge was written, that's how it was written, was that the nominations would go to the appointments committee and then go to council. But the appointments committee struck that from the charge and said that it would go to
I did. No, I literally did. Thank you. No, and you're reminding me. That's awesome. So to the Land Reserve Bond Fund, if I'm saying that correctly. I mean, I think I've come across, and it's just a question of how much should they ask for is really kind of where I'm at. So like, I'm in support of putting it on the ballot. I feel like there's going to be a lot of support to do that. I think when my conversations like briefly with Sue Foley Ferguson, I think what would be helpful, you know, you're asking me off the top of my head, it might be to clarify how much you think they should be asking for. And, you know, or at least what you think, because I mean, they asked for 2.5 million, and I think they obviously have to ask for more. And maybe that's not something you say in your memo, but I think it's something that's important that you guys need to talk about, is just that land is, I mean, I think it's important for everyone to hear that it's going to be more than what it was before the ask. And I think just your expertise behind, like, you know, this is how you achieve conservation. This is how you get the 30 by 30. And, you know, I'm doing an article that's going to come out this at the end of the week, and it's very, you know, just a brush over kind of what we've done so far. And I mean, you guys in my mind are the ones who had created the roadmap for it. So this is like the next step in the roadmap. So I think maybe not particularly saying, I don't know if you want to say how much it's going to cost, but I think it would be helpful for you guys to have a discussion that probably 2.5 million, because I believe that was the 2019 ask, is definitely not going to be enough, I don't think. And then just, I think, again, when I was talking to Sue, is it would be great to kind of spin it in a way around the idea that, you know, so many residents are upset about growth. And I really want to say, like, okay, like, this is one way that we want to combat growth, is we want to put money, we want to put funds into this to buy more land to conserve. I think you guys could be a great advocate for maybe that in a way, possibly. And I'm sure you have other ideas to support it, but that's kind of what I think of when I write right away.
Thank you. And Pete had his hand up, but before, okay. We did talk about that, I think before you signed on, about, you know, what do you do about an amount? And if there's a question from town council about how much to put in for the land bond, and the strong consensus is that we want to do some polling before we put a number to it. It only seems right to take some time instead of take a stab at a number, and certainly not use last time's number, because land prices have changed, times have changed, and we can't use last time's number. It's going to go away quickly. But really to poll, spend some resources on polling, and then sort out what that amount would be. So that's something sort of to help the council understand. We wouldn't be asking for a hard number right now, but only really to support working on putting this on the ballot. And now Pete has his hand up again. Pete.
Yeah, I wasn't sure I was going to say what I was going to say, but maybe, and I'm sure there are a lot of good ways of coming up with that number. Like you said, Randy, polling is going to be important. But maybe it makes sense to look at what a $2.5 million parcel, for instance, what the value of, just the average value of what was a $2.5 million parcel in 2003, what that would be nowadays, or from 2019 to nowadays. Just looking at the value of that and how that's going up, that might be a good starting point. Just something to consider.
Thank you.
And Karen, for our kind of planning purposes, when does the council need to make the decision on the amount that would go in the bond or go out in the referendum?
Geez, I mean, I'm trying to think of, I mean, what we did with the school. I'm trying to remember when that decision was made. I feel like it was in June is when you have to make a decision about what's going on the ballot for November. And so, you know, I know Sue had talked about doing some polling and things like that. And we should get an update from her and see what they're doing there with that as well. But I believe we get definitely by the end of spring, early summer.
We did hear from Jessica earlier about efforts that she's taking to connect us to resources.
Yes.
Yeah, so my Friday meeting with the Trust for Public Land got rescheduled to this week, so I'm very hopeful that that'll happen early this week, and I can circle back. I think that the PCLB was shooting for April, you know, having that figure in April, but really doing all that we can to be on the presidential ballot. And the reason for that is you get higher voter turnout, and historically, that's good for land conservation funding mechanisms. So it's really the ideal timing for this effort, and we're also running out of funds.
Cool. Anything else from the town council, Karen? Update for us?
No, I mean, we're going to have we just had all our reassignments and committees and things like that reorganized. And so we'll have our goal setting workshop in January. And I think, as I've said, as of now, I'm only really, I got to come up with some goals, because right now the 30 by 30 is really, I'm carrying over most of the goals that were conservation from before. And I'll continue to want to carry the 30 by 30 over, integrating conservation into the planning process. But, I'm always, so I still have a month to get more feedback on kind of how to continue the 30 by 30 goal into, I think, the next year. And any of that stuff, I'm always wanting to hear your suggestions and how we can make Scarborough better.
Thank you. Sustainability committee. Oh, excuse me, planning board.
Yeah,
Well,
and our planning board person left, so.
Yeah.
So it'll,
to the planning board meeting.
she went to the planning board meeting, exactly. So as we've said, this will be the last time we have that overlap. So really looking forward to the new schedule and the new year. So unfortunately, I don't have anything
Okay.
that I can share at this point.
Thank you. Sustainability committee.
So Sustainability Committee is wrapping up their funding request to the Finance Committee to establish a reserve account for sustainability efforts. That memo will be going out to the committee this week. Karen, I believe, is on the committee now, so she can look forward to that coming her way. And then the meeting this month will focus on the carbon fee and dividend with Citizens Climate Lobby. So we'll have a presentation so members can learn a little bit more about that and discuss moving the resolution forward as requested.
Great. Thanks. Parks and Conservation Land Board, Jessica.
Well, very happy to report that the town council unanimously approved last week the first reading for the 50 Hanson Road project, also known as the Silver Brook Preserve. So the request is $210,000 from the Land Bond Reserve Fund, and that was approved. There'll be a second reading coming up soon. I'm not 100% sure on the second reading date. Also wanted to highlight that the Scarborough Land Trust received $23,000 from the Maine Outdoor Heritage Fund for the project, and another $3,000 from Cabela's. So a lot of support for this project, and I'm assuming Andrew's in the audience and he can correct me on anything I missed, but it was, as Sue said, a really easy yes. For very little discussion needed, we were able to recommend within a single meeting, which is kind of a record for the Parks and Land Conservation Board. But it's just a really fantastic project that we're looking forward to.
Excellent. It's nice to know. We'll look forward to successful approval. Anything else from folks before we look forward to a new year, the new meeting date?
I just want to add that I am going to circle back with Todd Souza, our Community Services Director, for an update on their land management practices from this year and what is anticipated for next year. And so Marla and Rita, I'll touch base with you once I have that information, and we can kind of talk about if we want to have a PMAC item on the agenda, on an upcoming agenda, also to prepare for the 2024 field season. See if they have a plan in place for, or if they anticipate what's going to be needed to maintain our grounds and fields next season.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna take the liberty of using the next 5 minutes because this is our last meeting of 2023. We're in the season of gratitude and giving. One word to recognize or to describe your past year with the Conservation Commission. If you had one word to describe it, what would it be? Who would like to go first?
I will.
Oh, excellent, Maggie.
Learning.
Learning, excellent. And
We're trying to learn.
Encouraging,
Rita said,
encouraging,
nice. Marla?
Collaboration.
I'll go groundbreaking.
Nice. Karen?
Motivating.
And I'll say progress.
That was gonna be mine.
Oh, okay. Jamie was gonna say too. Anyone else wanna drop in a word? Thank you all.
Second, Rita's encouraging.
Encouraging. Nice, Kathleen. All right, thank you. That's a nice note, round of words to.
Jessica and
Oh, Jessica.
Oh, I was just to say impressed.
Impressed. Hey, look at us, everything we did. Fantastic. Well, thank you all. It's been a great year and looking forward to a banner year in 24. And happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
To adjourn.
Second.
Okay. All right. Thank you all.
Happy holidays, everyone.
happy holidays.
Holidays.
Thanks, all.